How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
It's probably the biggest news of the day, actually, and most of you will probably not even care about it, but I have put it off until now. Probably should have gotten to it sooner. We need to talk about it, though. And ironically, you're about to see an alignment between Donald Trump and Pocahontas, Senator Elizabeth Warren. It is the Netflix deal to buy Warner Brothers. I want to begin on a side note. One of the costs to Americans that we don't really appreciate these days is the subscription services. You got the Netflix, you got the Disney, you got the Prime, you got the Paramount, you got the Peacock, you got the Apple. I mean, you people have massive streaming services. Then you have YouTube TV or Fubo, and people are going bankrupt like $10-15 at a time. They keep raising the prices on all these streaming services. And at some point, it becomes unsustainable. You know, the only thing that Americans really all get together and watch these days together is football. And it's becoming harder and harder because of the greedy jerks of the NFL. They want to take stuff off of TV and they want to put it on streaming, like last night. Side note, there's a golf club in Atlanta. It's called In Town Golf. I'm a member of. I had to write an email. I was on my way home from a dinner and had an emergency. Actually, had to do some work. So I was like, you know what? I'll go there, sit at the bar, write my email, and was sitting there. And these 5 young guys were sitting at the bar watching the football game, having beers, and they were talking about Erickson and his girlfriend. And I finally leaned over and was like, wait a second. I'm sorry to interrupt. I keep hearing Erickson having a girlfriend, and I thought I was the only Erickson in Atlanta. And I think one of the guys thought I was trying to get him to shut up. I was like, no, I thought it was very funny. They kept talking about Erickson and his crazy girlfriend. I was like, I'm married and she's not crazy. This is wild. Apparently, there is another Erickson in the city of Atlanta, and that person was being talked about at the bar at In Town last night. It was very funny. And so I'm sitting there, I'm writing this, and they've got on the Cowboys game against the Lions, and it's the Amazon. You got to get on Amazon, I guess, to watch that. On Monday, you can get on ESPN. You can go to ESPN2 if you want to watch the Manning cast, or you get the ESPN streaming service. So you got the ESPN service, and you got Hulu there, and they're tied with Disney Plus. And then you've got Netflix, and you've got HBO Max, which is now apparently merging with Netflix. And then you got Paramount, which wanted to merge with HBO Max. And you got Peacock, and you got all these other services that, I've got this idea. What if we could put them all together into one package that you can get on all of your devices? We can call it, cable. And we're not going to go bankrupt with all of these different packages. For a long time in the 90s and the 2000s, we could say that, I don't like having 100 channels. I only watch these 15 channels. I don't want to watch 100 channels. What you didn't realize was that you were actually saving money, because if you wanted just that one individual channel, it was more expensive for you, because that one individual channel was run by a consortium that had 10 other channels they gave to the cable package to spread out the cost to make it cheaper for you. Now you're getting your one channel, but it keeps going up. It was $9, and then it was $12. Now it's $15.99, and you can't share your password. They've cracked down on it. And now Netflix wants to buy Warner Brothers and combine the two services together. And you got the left and you got the Trump administration furious with it, screaming antitrust. The problem with the left is that while the leaders of Netflix are on the left and big donors to the Democratic Party, The left understands where this is going, this consolidation. They don't like it. They say it's antitrust. They say it's going to be very uncompetitive. Yep, you're going to have Netflix, giant Netflix against the very tiny mom and pop shops that you know as Disney and Amazon and Apple and Paramount even, which is the small player. I don't like it because we're breaking up society to a degree. We are siloed in our media consumptions. We are siloed in what we watch, where we watch, how we watch. Do we have the same streaming services? You know, there was a time that globally, it might not have been you, but so many people watched Game of Thrones on a Sunday night that you would go to the office on Monday, and the office conversation was dominated by conversations about Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones actually is the last television show that most people watch together concurrently. Sunday Night Football is the reigning champion. You go to the office now on Monday, everybody's talking about the Sunday night game because Sunday Night Football is the most watched television program and streaming program in America and has been for 10 years. More people watch Sunday Night Football with Chris Collinsworth and the crew than any other program on TV. For actual non-sporting programs, it used to be Game of Thrones. And after that, that's when the rise of the streaming services came, and it's broken up. I love Slow Horses. There's one I'm watching now. It's a spinoff of Slow Horses. It's called Down Cemetery Road. It's a good show. None of you know what I'm talking about because it's on Apple TV. Hardly any of you watch Apple TV. Stranger Things is out on Netflix. Stranger Things is one of the biggest shows on Netflix. You got Bridgerton, Stranger Things, Squid Games. They take on a life of their own. But actually, most Americans don't watch it. Don't watch any of them. Don't know anything about Stranger Things. We've fractured and fragmented society in streaming, and now Netflix wants to buy Warner Brothers and consolidate the two of them together, making Netflix an even bigger powerhouse entity. Warner Brothers needs something. I'm assuming they're going to take CNN with it. I don't know what they'll do with CNN. Warner Brothers is thinking of spinning CNN and its news programming off. Warner Brothers, of course, owns CNN. But Netflix wants to consolidate them together. A $72 billion deal, stock and cash. And I'm not sure it's actually a good thing. Warner Brothers continues with plans to split itself into separate companies, one composing studio and streaming assets, the other containing its global cable network operations, such as CNN, TNT, and TBS. It doesn't look like Warner Brothers is interested, or it doesn't look like Netflix is interested in those. I don't see how the deal goes through. Donald Trump hates the leadership at Netflix. They are a bunch of far-left progressives. I think you're going to see this thing drag itself out. And on top of that, movie theaters don't want this to happen. Movie theaters don't want Netflix. Netflix says that it loves movie theaters and it releases movies to movie theaters. If you've paid attention, what Netflix does is it releases movies to movie theaters for about like a day or two and then puts them on Netflix. But here's the other thing. Have you seen the movies on Netflix? You know, I love Apple TV. I think they have great products. Slow Horses is fantastic. Severance, fantastic. Silo, if it's got an S in its name and it's on Apple TV, it's probably a great show. My wife hates Severance. My son and I love it. But even Apple's movies, they're not fantastic. What was the one? The Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, the Moon one about the Indians. It needed an editor. It wasn't good. It was a vanity project. The Mark Wahlberg family ones where he's the closeted hit guy, they're funny, but I mean they're not worth the big screen. The Netflix movies are the same way. We're killing off theaters. There's very few things that any of us want to go see. Marvel is past its prime. Disney produces stuff, but when's the last Marvel movie you saw in the theater? I went to see Fantastic Four. It was actually not a bad movie. My kids like Superman a little more, which was Warner Brothers. I didn't particularly like it. It was very comic book. I liked the Henry Cavill ones better. But there's not must go to the movies. So you've got Dune is coming out. Dune 3 will be the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse animated series. That is a great, if you're looking for a great superhero movie, get the Sony Spider-Verse animated ones. They're fantastic. The third one of that is coming out. I can't think of a lot of major movies, though. I can't see how theaters are going to survive the Netflix-Warner Brothers merger. And I can't see that this merger is going to survive. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, Erickson, isn't there raw politics out there? Yeah, look, I get it, but this is actually the biggest news of the day here. This is huge news. It's the lead story right now across the media at CNN, at the Wall Street Journal, at the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times. By the way, the Supreme Court has just agreed to review Donald Trump's order restricting birthright citizenship. That itself is going to be a big deal. But this is a big story because American culture continues to break apart and realign and segment and fragment. You know, look at conservative radio, frankly. We used to all tune into Rush Limbaugh. Wherever you were in the country, if it was the middle of the day, noon to 3 Eastern time, you turned into Rush Limbaugh. He's no longer there. And now you've got me, you got Todd Starnes, you got Dana Lash, you got Clayton Buck, you've got Vince Congolese, who replaced Dan Bongino. You've got, and it depends on which radio network you're listening to, and everything gets fragmented. Conservative radio is fragmented. The podcast world is fragmented. You don't just have Fox News on the right now. You've got OAN, you've got Newsmax. The left, of course, is CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS. We, less and less as a society, have common cultural concepts and common cultural institutions. And part of that is because there was a time in this country, if we're really honest about it, there was a time in this country where Hollywood and cultural institutions made things to appeal to Americans, and over time increasingly made things to appeal to progressive Americans at the exclusion of everyone else. Look at late night comedy shows. You used to have The Late Show with David Letterman. You had The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson or Jay Leno. And they played to the crowd. Now, Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel in particular, Jimmy Fallon less so, but Stephen Colbert has on Democratic politicians. He had on Prince Harry last night, who's not a funny person. He had on AOC the other day. He's had on Elizabeth Warren. He has on progressives. They have written off half of America. As the country has fractured, media institutions have played to that fracturing and inevitably have gone with their biases to the left, which has driven more and more conservatives away from mainstream media. And the problem is so much of the conservative media establishment out there produces garbage stuff. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be insulting, and this is going to sound very insulting, but there are a number of actors who have come out as conservatives who now complain that they can't get jobs because they're conservative. And honestly, a lot of us, they're just not very good at their jobs. And I don't mean to be insulting, but it's the truth. And no one wants to tell them the truth. There are some who have been shunned because they're conservative. Yes, there are some. But a lot of it is that they get these dreadful roles on the right, and it's just dreck. It's like so many of the Christian movies you go to the theater to see. God's Not Dead, episode 2588. I'm ready to move on. I get it. He's not dead. Let's move on to something else. What about Jesus? Tell me the story of Paul. And then you got the cultural institutions where you used to tell these stories. Remember when DreamWorks, its first animated series was Prince of Egypt, one of the best animated movies ever made, and it was phenomenal about the life of Moses. You fast forward to the Russell Crowe Noah movie that was put out by, Darren Aronofsky or so. It was garbage. It was garbage. The rock monsters and all that was horrible. Hollywood lost its ability to tell a relatable story. It can only tell woke, and woke is broke. And conservatives have they're not creative enough to put out good stuff. And now you got this fracturing of society around streaming institutions. Is it any wonder more people are turning to football, where they've gotten the politics out of it and people just want to watch sports, and now they can't because of the fracturing? This isn't good for society. We need to go back to cable. Guys, if you struggle to come up with gifts for family members, I got a suggestion for you, the Cove Pure. I love mine. I wasn't sure I would like it as much as I do, and I really, really, really do. What is a Cove Pure? Well, it's an water filtration system. It's on the countertop. You can get cold water. You can get hot water. It even has a bottle button, so you can get the warm bottle perfect for formula for your baby at night. It's really easy. It's so convenient. I use it all the time in my office. You will love it. It sits on the countertop. It uses reverse osmosis. It gets rid of like pharmaceuticals, fluoride, lead, arsenic. It's the purest water you can get. It tastes fantastic. If you're looking for a great gift for your loved ones or for yourself that they're actually going to use the Cove Pure. I partnered with them. They're giving you a $250 holiday discount with my link, covepure.com/Eric. That's COVEPURE.com/Eric, ERICK. You get $250 off, covepure.com/Eric. The sale is going to end, so take advantage of this $250 holiday discount, covepure.com/Eric. Welcome back. It is Open Line Friday, 877-973-7425. John, you're going to be the next caller. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Good, Eric. How you doing today?
Good.
Weekend is almost here.
Thank goodness.
Hey, I've got a son that's looking to contract with the Army this spring. When I look at what's going on with the bombing of this boat, where an admiral who decided to finish the boat off had to get the permission of a bloody attorney to do that? I mean, is that really what our military has come to? That is the attorneys making the decisions for the generals on what we can do?
Well, okay. So yes and no. In situations like this, because there is not an authorization for the use of force from Congress, each individual action has to be vetted to make sure it's concurrent to the president's powers as commander in chief without an authorization for force. If Congress authorizes the use of force in this situation, that element goes away. But because Congress hasn't authorized force, the actions that are taken have to be incumbent on the president of the United States in defense of the country, because presidents aren't allowed to start war. So that's actually what's going on here, just to clarify for you.
And would that apply same to SEAL Team 6 when they take any action? Does that have to be approved by an attorney?
Again, it depends on if there's an authorization for the use of force. So when SEAL Team 6 went in to sabotage Iranian assets, a JAG lawyer vetted to say that, yes, in fact, this is something that the SEALs can do pursuant to the president's powers, commander-in-chief, without an authorization for use of force. When the SEALs went in to kill Osama bin Laden, they didn't have to have the JAG officers because Congress had given an authorization for the use of force. So, yeah, it's a more complicated issue in that if Congress authorizes the use of force, all you got to do is determine these operations are consistent with that authorization. In this particular case, Congress hasn't given an authorization, so the lawyers have to be more involved to make sure what's being done isn't active war stuff, but defensive country stuff, which the president can do without an active war declaration. All right, let me tell you about Vision Computers, visioncomputers.com and 404-COMPUTE. That's how you get in touch with them. Anybody nationwide, whether you're in Alaska or all the way down in Palm Beach, Florida, where its weather is apparently pleasant right now. I need to go visit. You call them at 404-COMPUTE. They can build you a computer. They can upgrade your computer, and they can do managed IT. Let me talk about managed IT. Your company probably needs an IT support staff, and you probably can't afford to have that whole staff in-house, so you contract out. More and more managed IT services are relying on AI, and so your employees have to do chatbots and stuff if there's something wrong. Not with Vision Computers. You call them at 404-COMPUTE, you sign up. Your employees will get a phone number they can call, and in 15 seconds or less, they get a live human being on the phone to help them. And it makes your employees more productive. They can be really good at their jobs and let Vision Computers be good at the computers, and saves you money. It keeps you productive. Call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and for all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Hello there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I want to go take Christopher's phone call. Calling from Jacksonville, Florida. By the way, those of you listening on WOKV, I'm going to be down there this Wednesday. We've got a great event. In Ponte Vedra? It is, hang on. In fact, you can get tickets on sale there. Yes, the Salute America. It's going to be December 10th. Go to WOKV.com. You got to have a ticket to get in. It's going to be a great event. And then I'm doing my own version of Bourbon and Butts for their station. They did a hospital fundraiser this summer, so I've got a bourbon event down there on Thursday night. So I will be in Jacksonville at WOKV Wednesday and Thursday. But if you're in the Jacksonville area, WOKV.com, tickets are still available for this event on Wednesday night. So Christopher in Jacksonville, Florida, welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric. Just wanted to tie a couple of thoughts together. And by the way, thanks for coming to Jacksonville and Ponte Vedra. You had made the comment earlier, we're on the winning team, and you're talking about the Warner Brothers deal. I want to tie through a couple of comments here, thoughts. First of all, I think where we need to be is we have to stop letting the liberal media and the politicians define where we're at in the economy. I'm here to testify that the economy is strong. I was just with a lot of corporate leaders earlier this week comparing notes. We're all got strong businesses. The economy's going well. Everybody's having a hard time hiring people. Product is in ample supply. Stock market is at a record high. People's 401ks are up. Bonuses are strong. This is a solid economy. And I think where we need to focus is that, hey, we have a plan for growing the economy, which rises everybody's income level from the bottom all the way through the middle and the top. And I think what's important about the Warner Brothers deal is I think there's still a possibility here that Paramount could acquire Warner Brothers. This deal's not a done deal. There's still an opportunity for Paramount to take an offer via tender offer method directly to the Warner Discovery shareholders. Paramount's got tremendous resources. They've got the Ellison family and others behind them. And I think that what's important, and I mean, we need to see this manifest itself, though, is that Ellison family has said they want to move CBS to the center. And if they were successful in doing that, that would give one mainstream media that actually would be a more centrist point of view. Which,
and Christopher,
so you want to see that, and then that can help communicate that our economy is strong.
Yes. Well, okay. Yes. And, they want to take over CNN, which is one of the reasons they wanted Warner. But I got to say, though, Christopher, I would dispute that the economy is as strong as you say it is. And whether you think it is or not, anecdotes, not data. And the data from the University of Michigan Consumer Survey of consumer satisfaction is People don't think the economy is good. You're in the minority. And again, as I always would tell candidates who are running for office, know when you're in the minority, even when you think you're right. You think you're right, but you need to recognize you're in the minority. And you can say it's a messaging problem for the GOP, but it actually is a cost of living problem still because inflation is still high. The new number 2.8, they want to get it to 2. It's trending in the right direction, but it's still high. Wages are now receding in the sense that inflation is now again passing wages. So wage growth is less than inflation, which means every dollar you take home can buy you less. Gas prices are down, which is very good. That's good for the economy. But people aren't feeling it yet. And that's not a messaging problem for the GOP. It is a translation into the economy. For example, I saw Ben Domenech, a buddy of mine. He's the editor of The Spectator, and it was pointing out that the Trump administration probably needs to point out that the Biden team did such a number on the economy. It's taken a while to fix. We're headed in the right direction, taking a while to fix. DeSantis, in fact, was on Fox and Friends this morning talking about this very issue.
What is the message? Because the inflation is still high. So far, groceries are a little bit up, even though they're up only 2%. Inflation goes down. What would, if I said right now, give a speech to voters who are on the fence about who they should vote for? What should be the bullet points?
I think it's economy, immigration. Like, we don't talk about immigration as much as we were maybe when Biden was letting it in. The border is secure. We've stopped the influx. He's now working on a moratorium of new people coming in, particularly from some of these countries where the people are hostile. That's a huge victory for people. They need to be talking about that and go even bolder on that. I just think you got to be bold. I think you got to be strong. And I think one of the frustrations with the Congress is, what have they done since August till now? They really haven't done anything, right? And it's like, if I were, I'd be like every day coming out with something new and make the Democrats go on the record, show the contrast. Think about why we've been able to win big in Florida is because there's a very sharp contrast to what we're doing and what what the liberal Democrats stand for. Parents' rights, illegal immigration, tax cut, anything you can think of. Most voters knew we were on their side, and I think you got to really make that sharp. But I would tell you, the Democrats, they caused a lot of this with the inflation, and now they're acting like it was like they had nothing to do with it.
Oh, you do good on the couch. You got to come in more often. Sorry it's so cold.
Thank you so much, Governor.
Yeah, look, he's right. There are things for the president to highlight. Unfortunately, one of the things the president has chosen to highlight are tiny cars. Tiny cars are a great idea that the president has chosen to highlight. Tiny cars are cheap, very small cars. The Koreans and the Japanese have a fascination with them, and the president is allowing the supply chain to be built in this country. And I think it's a great thing. I think, however, that the president has a conflicting message with a lot of people as well. And that is that the president of the United States wants large families. And large families cannot fit in tiny cars. Large families need large cars. The environmentalists, and by the way, I want you to know, I don't even think it's a conspiracy theory. I think it's true that environmentalists believe humanity is bad for the planet. You hear this all the time, and that large families are bad for the planet. So one of the things that environmentalists have done over time is they have sought to disincentivize large families. We're having conversations today about how a family cannot survive on one income households anymore. Both parents have to work. Some people don't want that. The sacrifices you have to make, regardless of your position on that, you do need to understand that this has been part of an environmentalist regulatory push to drive up the cost on families. The Democrats themselves, they claim, they talk a very good game. They say that the Republicans are the party of the rich and they're the ones funded by the billionaires. They say that they're the party of the working class and families, and they're the ones putting in place the policies to be punitive towards large families. They don't like large families. They view them as a strain on the environment and resources. That's why they push abortion so much. But Republicans can't counter with saying we're going to make cheap, tiny cars. The president's tariffs have had a direct impact on the cost of vehicles in this country. It's one reason he's pushing tiny cars. The president's policies have driven up the cost of vehicles in this country, but the original driver of the cost of vehicles in this country was the regulatory structure put in by the left to drive up the cost of cars and other things to disincentivize you from having large families. I go to church with several families that have 15-passenger vans because they not only have large families, they've adopted a lot. And God bless them for what they have done. It's a good thing. They have taken children out of foster homes and provided real homes for them. They have their own families. You see large families in this country these days, you know they're Christians and they're treated as pariahs. I have a friend who has 12 kids or more, devoutly Catholic, was deeply offended by the last pope talking about large families and the strain on the environment. To the Republicans, I would tell you, if you want people to have large families, and by the way, you need people to have large families, and there is a divide in this country, blue states versus red states. You're more likely to find large families in red states than blue states. You're more likely to find single people and married couples with no kids in blue states. They're not procreating. At some point, the red states are going to breed them out of existence. It's just true. Demographically, it's true. But you got to lower costs on those families. You want to have a stable family. This is not meant to offend anyone in your life choices. It's not. You just know the data is true. You just don't like to hear it. The most stable family in America is the two-parent heterosexual household where one parent tends to the kids. That tends to be the mom. Doesn't have to be. Just one parent tends to the kids, one parent works. Those are the families that also struggle the most these days because of the cost of living in the country. And offering tiny cars is no solution when the big cars are priced out of their range because the big cars are required to have safety features. The fuel efficiency standards make them harder to come by. The tariffs drive up the cost. You got to lower the cost for those large families you want to have. Tariffs play a role on that, but it's not just tariffs. There's a regulation structure that drives up the cost on families. And then there's the schooling cost. A large family's got to homeschool kids or send them to a private school if they want them to get a good education because so many of the public schools suck. Public schools around the country are terrible. In red states, they tend to be better. In states where there's an accountability structure based on standardized testing, those schools tend to do better than in the blue states where the teachers' unions have shut down the standardized test. That's why red states have more families, because you as a family can live better in a red state and know your kid can get a good education in a public school, for the most part, except in the urban enclaves. In the urban enclaves, the left is so thoroughly taken over them, even in the red states, your kid's more likely to learn the colors of the rainbow and the gender unicorn than they are mathematics. We, for a long time, didn't have to take seriously reproductive rates in this country because so many people were having kids. But as our nation is reduced in population, Americans either have to have more kids or we got to have more immigrants to keep the country's lights on. It's the choice of the citizenry. And in blue states, they've made a choice to decline, and the red states haven't. Part of that is cost of living. The cost of living matters greatly. And part of the cost of living isn't just groceries or gas. It's the cost of houses. It's the cost of cars. It's the cost of education. It's those big ticket items that improve the health of a family. And right now, families are struggling. And so, Christopher, I don't mean to be combative with you. I really don't. I understand you've been surrounded by CEOs and everybody's saying business is good. But the data for most Americans out there doesn't show they feel it. They don't feel like it's good. They feel like they're falling further behind. And perception becomes reality with voters, and they will vote out the GOP and put back in place the Democrats if the Republicans can't get a handle on this issue. It was always a mistake, I think, for the president to come in and claim that he would immediately fix Biden's problems. And I think it would behoove the president to come out and say, look, y'all, Biden broke this thing so bad, we've done our best, and we're going to keep doing our best, but you got to give us more time. That's how bad it is. The U.S. trade representative did an interview with Politico and said, well, behind the scenes, members of Congress, left and right, are begging for the tariffs to be put in statutory form because the tariffs are so awesome. He refuses to name them. I can tell you, I talked to a lot of members of Congress, particularly on the Republican side, and not only do they not like tariffs, they get phone calls from constituents every day complaining about the tariffs. I don't know who this guy claims he's talking to. I don't really believe that he's talking to anybody. The best thing that could happen to the GOP right now is for the Supreme Court to save the Republicans from themselves and get rid of the tariffs, and that would at least be a start in the ongoing economic recovery. But they got to do more, and hiding behind tiny cars as a solution is not the way to move forward. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I am working on, during commercial breaks at the end of the show, I get in and what are the headlines that I need to make sure you guys know before you get home with the 4 Things to Know podcast. You can text Eric to 33777 and subscribe to that standalone 5-minute podcast. I will tell you out of the gate, the Supreme Court has decided to review Donald Trump's birthright citizenship order. If you will recall, the president released an executive order essentially saying that you have to be born in this country of American citizens to be an American citizen, which displaces over 100 years of understanding of the law, going back to the Wong Kim Ark case. There are some people who are self-described experts on that case who insist that we have been misreading it for 100 years. That case essentially said a kid born in the United States to 2 immigrants was an American citizen, but people who disagree with the current interpretation that if you're born in this country, you're automatically a citizen, say the nuance is that those 2 people were lawfully allowed to be in the country, so therefore a child of illegal immigrants is not. Now, you're thinking, didn't they already decide this case? No, the case was argued before the court, but they focused on the issue of nationwide injunctions. They did not focus actually on the citizenship issue. I will say that one of the loudest voices in that argument about birthright citizenship and not changing it was Clarence Thomas, who did not seem himself open to the idea that we should go back and revisit the long-held view that people born in this country are automatically citizens. So when you got Clarence Thomas expressing skepticism there, the court has decided that they're going to take this up. It takes 4 members of the court to discuss it. So this is, I think the Supreme Court wants to provide clarity in this issue. It's going to be very, very interesting to actually hear the argument. So now, when will the case be heard? That's one of the issues. The Supreme Court says it's going to take it. They're going to take the appeal. The court will actually focus on that part of the question, and it will probably hear it later this year, later this court term. So sometime next year, they're going to hear the case. It's going to be fascinating to see what they do on this. I'm actually looking forward to this case. I think it's going to be fascinating. And I think they're probably going to say that if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen. And there are going to be a lot of people who are in for a rude awakening who have just convinced themselves that we've been getting it wrong for the last 100 years. And they'll still maintain the court got it wrong and that they were always right. But what they think doesn't matter. It's what the Supreme Court thinks is what matters. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Y'all, my friends at Old Glory Bank made a big announcement this morning. They're going to be traded on the NASDAQ, a publicly traded company. They're going public, and I'm delighted for them. I just, seeing good people do well matters to me, and I think they're good people. Mike Ring, the CEO, is a great guy, just salt of the earth guy. My buddy Bill Shine, who used to be at Fox News, helped him get started. He's a great guy. Larry Elder, Ben Carson, Mary Fallon, the former governor of Oklahoma, John Rich, all these people came up with the idea of Old Glory Bank because they wanted a bank where conservatives could do business with people who share their values. And they started Old Glory Bank. And there were a couple of competing conservative groups out there trying to start a bank. Old Glory did it right. They bought a bank out of Oklahoma City. They expanded its charter nationwide, allowing you to do business. And I was an original customer of theirs. I signed up online myself, didn't know the actual people there at the time. I've got to know them. OldGloryBank.com/Eric. You can get an account with them as well. One of the fastest growing banks in the country. They're by conservatives for now conservatives and everybody who believes in freedom. OldGloryBank.com/Eric. Sign up today. OldGloryBank.com/ERICK. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. OldGloryBank.com.